The UN's top climate negotiator says a climate treaty this year is unlikely. China says it has no intention of capping greenhouse gas emissions for the time being. And the EPA has 16 challenges against its endangerment finding. We talked to a former EPA attorney about the legal issues involved in these complaints.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. UN Climate Chief Yvo de Boer says he doubts a binding world climate treaty can be reached this year. Speaking on the sidelines of a UN conference of environmental ministers in Bali, Yvo de Boer, who recently announced his upcoming resignation, says there's not enough time to recover from disagreements among industrialized and emerging nations from the December talks in Copenhagen. The next chance for a worldwide deal comes in December during climate talks in Cancun, Mexico. But de Boer says the participants need more time to set up a framework of steps to mitigate the effects of rising levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and to establish a financial and climate change aid system that can convince developing countries to support a new deal. He says the focus should shift toward next year's summit in South Africa and for an agreement before the Kyoto Protocol's obligations expire in 2012. China's top climate change negotiator says the world's biggest carbon emitter has no intention of capping greenhouse gas emissions for the time being. During a meeting on climate change policy in Beijing, Su Wei said the country's carbon emissions had to increase because the economy is still developing. He said China could not and should not set an upper limit on greenhouse gas emissions now. Beijing has pledged to reduce its carbon intensity 40 to 45% by 2020. That's from 2005 levels. Su said the pledge would be a binding part of China's next two 5-year economic development plans. Su also repeated China's commitment to making its economy more energy efficient. His remarks come a day after President Hu Jintao said the country must recognize the importance, urgency, and difficulty of dealing with climate change. The U.S. is now facing more than a dozen legal challenges against its plans to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Last week was the deadline to file challenges to EPA's endangerment finding. Now the agency faces 16 challenges to its decision that greenhouse gases do in fact endanger public health. Among those filing suit, industry associations, lawmakers, and 3 states. Today, Clean Skies talked with former EPA Attorney Dick Stoll about the legalities involved in these complaints, and he points to EPA's enforcement level of 25,000 tons of CO2 annually as the motivation for many of the legal challenges.
Their ability to keep it at that 25,000 tons is very suspect under the very words of the Clean Air Act. And so the fear that a lot of people in the industry and NAM rationally have is that once EPA goes final with this new tailoring rule, which is following along here, and establishes a 25,000 ton threshold or a 40,000 ton threshold or whatever, that will be reversed by the DC Circuit as unsustainable under the very words of the Clean Air Act. And then you really will be getting into homes and restaurants and small farms and whatever.
Well, Dick Stoll also talked with Clean Skies' Tyler Souters about the states and NGOs siding with EPA in the case and how he sees the legal challenges and enforcement playing out. Their conversation is here on the site, cleanskies.com. Well, no more traffic jams and fewer accidents. That's the goal of IBM and the Department of Transportation. The two are teaming up to study how to make trucks, trains, and automobiles talk to one another. A group of transportation experts met on Capitol Hill to discuss how to accomplish this by using current technology. DOT has already launched a program called IntelliDrive. The system promises to link all forms of transportation using onboard GPS systems, navigating around congestion, using crash avoidance technology, saving gas, and saving lives.
So what we are focused on, kind of like a laser, is that the IntelliDrive program is emphasizing that connected vehicles of all types, and again, everything that I say is multimodal. We're talking about private cars, we're talking about trucks, buses, and fleets, that once they are connected, this will be the defining element of a 21st century transportation system and critical to achieving our goals, particularly in the area of safety, the environment, and mobility.
According to a study done by the Texas Transportation Institute, Americans waste nearly 3 billion gallons of fuel a year stuck in traffic jams. A federal safety investigator says officials are looking for safer alternatives to a venting procedure that led to a deadly explosion this month at a natural gas power plant under construction in Connecticut. Donald Holstrom of the U.S. Chemical Safety Board said today before the explosion, workers for O&G Industries purged a gas line at the Clean Energy Systems plant using a practice known as a gas blow. This put 400,000 cubic feet of gas mixed with air into a small area close to the plant's power block. And while common, Holstrom called the venting procedure inherently unsafe. The board is strongly cautioning the industry against this practice, and Holstrom says it is working to develop ways to find safer alternatives. He says the best way of avoiding future accidents is by preventing or controlling the release of natural gas. 6 workers were killed in that explosion. Federal regulators have received leasing proposals from 2 Virginia companies looking to develop offshore wind farms. Apex Wind Energy is proposing to lease 116,000 acres to build a wind farm with up to 1,500 megawatts of capacity. Seawind Renewable Energy envisions building 240 turbines. A company statement says they'll generate power equivalent to that used by some 250,000 homes. Both wind farms would be located 12 miles off of Virginia Beach, well within the coastal area that's also being considered for gas and oil drilling. Governor McDonald has made offshore drilling and wind energy a cornerstone of his administration, hoping to make Virginia the energy capital of the East Coast and the first to produce energy offshore. Well, that is the Energy Report. We'll see you again tomorrow with your latest energy news. For any suggestions or comments, you can find us at contact@cleanskies.com or also on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, good night.